Excuse me? Could you tell me how to get onto the platform? Not to worry, dear. It's Ron's first time to Hogwarts as well. Now, all you've got to do is walk straight at the wall between platforms 9 and 10. Best do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous. Good luck.
That was the scene from Harry Potter, where the boy wizard sees the famous Hogwarts train, or express, for the first time. Now, there's a certain romance when it comes to the movies and when they're dealing with rail travel. But for us, rails are as much a political football as they are a practical necessity. And tonight, we're going to look at trains and light rail travel, which is a variation on trains, and try to look back on the rich history of both networks in the Philippines. I'm Manolo Quezon, the Explainer. This is the Explainer, where I explain why issues are issues. Now, returning as our explainee tonight is Pat Evangelista, fellow columnist at the PDI and an ANC producer. Welcome back to the show, Pat.
Glad to be here.
Well, you know, tonight we're looking at trains, both the kind that go within the provinces and also within Metro Manila, and how they have a longer history than most of us realize. When you read the papers or look at the news, it's often about the seamier side of the railways in terms of the way they're constructed. But I'd like to be more positive tonight and look at how they're interesting both historically and how they're exciting in terms of the technology and the way they
Well, I'd say exciting. I'm your train commuting girl, so I think I'm your perfect explainee for the night.
There you go. And we're joined on our studio audience by some members of REES, a group dedicated to the preservation and restoration of Philippine railways and what they call our industrial heritage. And we're going to be looking at what that means, and hopefully they'll be jumping into our show tonight as we go through. But as we start, why don't you invite our viewers to join in the discussion?
Of course. If you have anything to say in the discussion, all you have to do is to text REACT space X space your name space your question or reaction and send to 2366 for Globe and Sun and 231 for Smart. Or you can log on to www.the-explainer.com.
The history of our country's train system when we return. Welcome back. You know, Pat, before we started this on ANC, you remember the Inquirer tried the Inquirer TV thing? And one of the first, they asked me to do one segment for them, and it involved trains. We actually went to the different rail lines and looked at how the houses were practically right beside the tracks and how the trains were creeping really slowly and having to toot their horns. And
Every time, yes.
Yeah, and you really saw a side of metropolitan living that most people don't want to see. And now you also have an experience that's basically in the news a lot because of your taking the MRT a lot.
Well, yes. I live something like 3 minutes from the Quezon Avenue station, so all I have to do is walk up. The thing is,
what have you observed over the past few months?
Well, it's been jam-packed for the past few months. I mean, I started riding trains about 4 years ago, and at a certain time you can't breathe in that space for about 10 people. You cram like 40. Now it's like they're cramming 100. So I think
but you see how convenient and how useful
it's very
it can
convenient.
Be, right?
And this is difficult.
This is why news, for example, that there was a news item on ABS-CBN newsonline.com, and they were saying, for example, that the earliest you can get additional trains for the MRT and the LRT is 2010.
2010.
Yeah, so can you imagine that? But so the importance of like a show like this where we're looking at rail travel is maybe we can encourage our officials and everyone to work faster to get
Or
those
more of
trains in.
challenge our officials to work a little bit faster.
Now, if you wanted to learn more about trains, the World Wide Web has tons of wonderful images that generous photographers share with the world. Now, we'll be using a lot of photos we get from a fantastic message board, for example, called Skyscraper City, where, among other things, railroad enthusiasts post pictures like this one. Now, another such place where you can find interesting photos is a place like Digital Photographer. Now, thanks to them and a recent expedition they made, we can see the Philippine National Railways trains up close. Now, to the condition of the railway's rolling stock, to the tired old engines that pull them, and the residences of the urban poor, and how it all comes together, these photographers have been where far too few of their countrymen have been before. Now, our elderly, battered railroad, however, offers up a promise. Now, that promise is both a return to the past and a step forward into the future. Now, railways are a return to the past because the preceding half-century has been focused on giant highway projects, leading railways by the wayside. A railway system here at home precedes the era of the highway, actually, dating back to the twilight of the Spanish era. Now, railways are, of course, familiar to Filipinos who have been to Europe, India, or whichever part of the world makes rail travel an affordable mode of transport for the masses. But railways, which also helped make America a rich industrialized nation, for example, were never the primary focus of American efforts to build up our colonial infrastructure. Now, in many ways, the Americans had a love-hate relationship with the railways left behind as a legacy of Spanish rule. You've got to love the maps they put up in Wikipedia, such as this one, and it represents the historical and theoretical extent of the Philippine National Railways, or PNR. Now, there's an interesting detail here that our audience was telling us, for example. We're showing here the map of the railways of the PNR, and you were saying that there was even a proposed railway to Cagayan? Yeah, to the Cagayan Valley.
Let's ask one of the gentlemen here.
Hi, I'm Gary Satry, and this is not quite exactly true because William Howard Taft had a vision for railways. He felt that, and he was the first Governor General of the country, of course. He felt that national progress would be accelerated by a railroad network on all the major islands, and not just Luzon and Mindanao, but all the major islands, and have them connected to towns on each island.
But you were telling us before the show started that there was actually work started on building a railway to the Cagayan Valley.
I'm sorry I didn't catch all of that.
Yeah, you were telling us before the show started that there was work started on the expansion of the railways to the Cagayan Valley.
Yes, that's right.
And what happened with that?
What happened, sir, when you told us that there was supposed to be an expansion of rails to the Cagayan Valley? Was it continued or was it derailed?
It's greatly derailed.
Okay, but we'll be asking more about that later. Now, up here from Manila to La Union, if you look at this map, it's basically what we know and what you read about in the papers as North Rail. And from Manila to Bicol, which is down here, South Rail. Now, North Rail is the most historic line in a sense. If you read accounts of the Filipino-American War, much of the American efforts to pin down and crush our First Republic involved seizing the railway and using it to facilitate the movement of troops. Now, this picture here, which you see of Malolos, if you go on to the next picture after that, shows you Arthur MacArthur and friends at the Malolos railway station of the Manila Railroad. Now, the Americans, once they took over, weren't too keen on railroads, but right now we're going to pause and show you this picture here. Sir, you have a very interesting story about this particular picture of a derailed train.
Well, the railways during the Philippine-American War was first used by Aguinaldo, but when the Americans advanced to the north, they were able to gain control of the railways. In that photograph, Aguinaldo troops dumped all the locomotives and rolling stock along the Calumpit River.
Okay, so this is the Calumpit River?
Yes.
And you found this photograph, didn't you, during your research?